What is up, guys, and welcome back to another video. So in today's video, what I'm going to be doing is my ultimate Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 3 fighting guide. In this video, I'm not going to be going over exact techniques, but instead I'm going to be going over general tips that are going to apply to everyone and should help you dominate fights consistently, whether you're playing competitive, arena, or just regular matches. If you find this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it and consider subscribing as well if you want to see more content just like this in the future. And lastly, if you want to help your boy out a bit extra, then consider using code Teckoh in the Fortnite item shop, as it's 100% free and it really does help me out a ton. But with that said, and without further ado, let's get into today's video. So the first major tip I have for winning fights is something that's going to absolutely change your game if you manage to get good at it, and that's controlling the pace. What I mean by controlling the pace is a strategy, both mental and physical kinda, and it basically involves you being the aggressor whenever that's possible. In fights, it's hard to doubt that the person doing the pushing is usually the person who wins. If you look at pretty much anyone's gameplay, this is obvious, and I'm sure that you all have had some of those games where your momentum is just so strong and you're basically just clobbering everyone, even players who might be better than you. And honestly, based on my own VOD reviews and my own experience, I just find that aggression in fights is something super underrated among casual and beginning competitive players. So with that being said, the big question here is, how do you actually apply this tip? And the answer to that question is super simple, and that's simply to focus on it during your games. Aside from the common sense stuff like healing when you get hit for a lot and looting and farming if you're in shambles, you should never appear weak or scared in a fight. So be the one on height, be the one trying to box your opponent as fast as possible, and overall you want to be the one that controls the pace of the fight. This will take some time to learn and to build the confidence necessary to do it, but if you can learn how to do this effectively, you'll become an immensely better fighter super quickly. Moving on to our next tip in this video though, and this one is going to be to master piece control. I know you've probably heard this tip before, but honestly it's very hard to talk too positively about how important piece control is. To put it simply, if you know all the common piece control moves in Fortnite and you can apply them consistently in fights, then you're going to be pretty hard to stop even by some of the best players in the game. Like literally just having a basic grasp of piece control probably puts you in like the top 10% of players in terms of mechanics. Piece control is an insanely important skill to have, so if you haven't gotten good at it yet, you probably should. In terms of how to actually practice piece control, I won't go too crazy in depth during this video since we do have a lot of stuff to cover, but there are multiple fantastic maps that you can use in order to practice and improve your piece control, and I'll go ahead and put the codes up to some of my personal favorites right now. The code on top is Raiders Piece Control Map V3, which has over 25 different scenarios dedicated to learning new piece control techniques. Then you've got the middle code, which is Tito's Realistic Edit and Piece Control Map V4, and that one has another ton of scenarios to help you improve your piece control. And on the bottom, you've got Sly Jack's Movement Map, which is super advanced, but basically helps you master the skill of piece controlling without taking damage. Although I can't cover these maps in too much depth during this video, just because I want to get moving, keep your eyes out for a piece control video where I'll be covering a ton of different maps and techniques to improve your piece control. If you want to see that, then make sure you're subscribed and have those post notifications turned on, that way you don't miss out. Another key aspect of winning fights in Fortnite is one that almost every player overlooks. I want to give you all a question real quick. What is the one skill in Fortnite that ultimately results in your ability to kill any player? What I mean by that is you could be as gifted in every other category as possible, but if this one skill isn't there, then you physically won't be able to kill a single player ever. And if your answer to this question was aim, then you're 100% correct, and that's why this next tip is grinding aim training. Especially nowadays in Fortnite, most players know how to build super fast and gain height. A lot of players even know the basics of piece control and how to play out a box fight, but aim is the one skill that most players in Fortnite are simply just mediocre at. If you look at any pro player, whether they're on controller or keyboard and mouse, you notice that they do a lot of the same mechanical moves that you and I would do in any given game. But aside from simply being better at timing and knowing how to use them, the key to their success is that once they make a play, they reliably hit their shots and out aim everybody they run into. So my point here, as you can probably tell by now, is that aim training is one of the most important things you can do if you're trying to become unstoppable in Fortnite. In terms of what to actually do to maximize your improvement in terms of aim, you have a few options. You can do something like an aim duel, an external aim trainer like Kovacs or Aim Beast, or you could even do in-game maps like Scavix. But what you ultimately want to do is build an aim training routine that allows you to consistently practice, allows you to practice in somewhat realistic situations, and ultimately carries over into the real game. I actually did a video very recently on how to improve your aim in Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 3, so consider checking that out if you want some more information on like specific maps and routines. But overall, if you're not aim training on a consistent basis already and you want to become unstoppable in fights, then starting to aim train consistently will be one of the best moves you could possibly make. Moving on to our next tip though, and this one is going to directly relate to the way you practice fighting, and that's going to be having high practice standards. In Fortnite, there's no doubt that a lot of practice methods are super easy. Pretty much all of us can jump into a public match, run into 20 bots every game and steamroll them all, maybe running into like one good player for every 20 bots. And at the same time, we can also jump into a 1v1 map with the least skilled person out of everyone we know and clobber them over and over over until they rage quit. But when you're trying to become insane at fighting, what you really need to do is set a high standard during your practice, specifically a standard that matches what you're going to run into in the real game. So for example, if you're trying to improve your fighting in order to place higher in tournaments, then you're going to want to set a standard for your practice that involves playing against other competitive players. Because obviously, if you're trying to practice for competitive, but you go against players who have never played a tournament in their life, then you're basically just going to end up getting rolled once it actually becomes tournament time, simply because you're not experienced against those types of players. So what I recommend you do is super simple. When you're practicing fighting, try to find the best ways to practice against players of the caliber that you're trying to go against. That might involve grinding a ton of arena, since most players in champs are at least similar to the first round of a cash cup, or something like 1v1s and zone wars from a scrim server if you're a bit stronger in terms of competitive. Or it could also be something super simple like a public zone war lobby or random matchmaking 1v1s if you're a fairly average player. But the ultimate idea here is to set a high standard for your practice. That way, in the worst case scenario, the players that you run into in real games are basically the same as those you practice against. And in the best case scenario, the players you run into become an absolute breeze since everyone you practice against is more skilled than them. So basically, find the best players you can practice against within realistic standards and practice against them non-stop. And I guess this might be a good time to mention, if you're trying to find players to 1v1, practice with, or even play with as a team, consider checking out my Discord server, which is going to be linked down in the description. All you got to do is select your region, and then you're going to gain the ability to search for and find teammates or players to practice against. So if you're on the lookout for people to play with, then be sure to check that out. Once again, it's going to be linked near the top of the description. And finally, guys, getting into my last tip as to how you can win more fights in Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 3, this is a simple but powerful tip, and that's to practice consistently. Now that you know how to actually set the standards and essentially the strategy for your practice, the biggest key to mastering fighting now is basically to do it so often that it becomes second nature. I don't mean to be all sentimental and fancy with the quotes and stuff, but I think it was Bruce Lee who said something along the lines of, "I don't fear the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." What I'm trying to say here is that repetition is super powerful, and in Fortnite, the best players are almost always the ones who practice difficult situations the most. This could mean various things, like grinding an absolute boatload of arena, playing scrims non-stop, or doing an absurd amount of 1v1s, but if you're trying to practice fighting in Fortnite, there's no better way to do that than to do it over and over again. Most of the skills that we've talked about in this video, such as piece control, aim training, and knowing how to control the pace of your fights, will be super important in fights. But at the same time, if you do all the mechanical practice in the world and you don't know how to actually apply it, and you haven't practiced actual fights, you're not going to get anywhere. So practice your mechanics, master the fundamentals, and then practice against skilled players on a consistent basis in order to improve. If you do all these steps and repeat them over and over again, you're essentially guaranteed to become an insane fighter in Fortnite. But with that being said, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on how to win more fights in Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 3. Overall, by following all the tips and strategies outlined in this video, you should be able to improve your fighting skills on a consistent basis, and whether you're playing arena, tournaments, or just regular matches, you should be able to handle players of all skill levels and perform way better in game. If this video helped you out, then be sure to drop a like on it, and consider subscribing as well if you want to see more content just like this in the future. As well as that, if you want to help your boy out a bit extra, then consider using code Teckoh in the Fortnite item shop. It's 100% free and it really helps me out a ton. With that said though, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.